Hey, Jill, I'm here and I'm on time, just like you asked.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, Josh. Oh, I feel like I'm on MSNBC with your background. I don't see the RBG Hanukkah menorah anymore. The mail truck.
I got, here's the mail truck. It's right here.
Okay.
And here's the count. But here's the thing. All the votes have been counted. The mail's been delivered. And RBG looked over us. So we actually used her for Hanukkah. So
Good. Good. We're just waiting for Mark to get on.
If
Bert,
somebody could just set, Mark said, if we could just send him the original announcement again for him to register. He says the link is not working for him.
Howard, can you go upstairs and tell me?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start.
Yeah, because Josh is going to go first anyhow.
Yeah, so that's
Hello,
fine.
Josh.
hi, Bert. Good to see you, buddy.
So hi, everybody. We're going to begin. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Zippin. I am the chairwoman of Democratic Jewish Outreach Pennsylvania. We are a federal PAC that supports candidates for federal office in the state of Pennsylvania. And we are very excited for all of you tonight to be on this call. We are thrilled to be able to have Josh Shapiro, our amazing Attorney General, who many of us on this call have known for many, many years. And the way tonight is going to work is Bert Siegel is going to introduce our two speakers. Josh is going to go first because he has to jump off a little early. There'll be some Q&A with Josh. Mark will speak. There'll be some Q&A with Mark, and then we'll conclude. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box because we will be checking the chat box during the event. We are going to start with introductions of Josh by Bert Siegel, who is the vice chair and co-founder of DJOP. Go ahead, Bert.
Thanks, Joe. And hopefully Mark will get here soon. Particularly since I'm going to say nice things about him. I want him to hear that. Yeah, it really is a great personal pleasure to get to introduce two people who I not only do I admire very much, but I have known for a very, very long time. Matter of fact, I first met Josh when he was 12 years old. So that is a long time. Josh does have
Jerry, see if you can get it on the computer.
Everybody please mute.
yourself. So anyhow, Josh does have a 7:30, so I'll introduce Josh and then introduce Mark right before he speaks. As I said, I had met Josh when he was 12. He really was already an activist at the age of 12. He was involved in the Soviet Jewry movement as a young man, and he had a passion for social justice and politics as a kid. So it's not a great surprise that he's doing what he's doing now and doing it so well. Upon his graduation from college, he spent a number of years working on the Hill for several House and Senate members. In 2004, after returning to Pennsylvania, he ran for state rep, and he ran such an impressive campaign that he defeated a former member of Congress who actually, John Fox had a lot more recognition than Josh did, but Josh was such an impressive candidate, he beat the late John Fox. Josh ran for re-election 3 more times in recognition of his leadership. His colleagues made him the deputy speaker of the House. He won re-election a couple of times. And in 2011, he ran for one on Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. He was the chairman of that body, and it was the first time the Democrats had actually controlled it. In 2016, he was elected to be our Attorney General, a position Josh now fortunately holds, and he was just recently reelected. In that role, he demonstrated not only great skill, but considerable courage, taking on the insurance industry, the polluters, and most famously, the Catholic hierarchy when they failed to take the necessary steps to protect children from the abuse of clergy. In the past several months, Josh has battled the Trump campaign's attempts to overturn our votes
Aye.
We had elected Joe Biden president. So we all want to hear from Josh, explain why the Republicans have gotten involved in such, to use a political term, mishegas, and hopefully
I'm here.
Yeah, hi, Mark.
Mark, we will have a better understanding of what's going on. Both Josh and Mark are extending. I mean, I just want to make a point that both Josh and Mark are outstanding rather examples of Jewish individuals who live what were taught in the Hebrew scriptures about pursuing justice. I believe that this emphasis on our obligation to see that any injustice anywhere must be opposed is placed in our scriptures in the context of what God expects from us. So justice, the pursuit of justice, has really informed both of these guys' professional and personal lives. And as I said, I'm pleased to be with them because I haven't seen either one of them in a long time. Josh, Bill, you're going to introduce.
Yeah, Josh, why don't you begin with a few words, and then we have a multitude of questions for you.
Great. Well, it's really good to be with all of you here tonight. And I will just share a few brief comments, and then I would love to take your questions. And Jill, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for the opportunity to visit with everybody. And Bert, thanks for the kind introduction. We do go way back to the Soviet Jewry movement there. And so it's nice to be able to visit with you. And look, just a point of personal privilege before I say a few things about this, the work that we've done to protect and secure our democracy. From the bottom of my heart, just thank you to so many people on this Zoom call for helping me not just win re-election, but go on to be the highest vote getter in the history of Pennsylvania, thanks to the tremendous support, not just in our region, but all across the Commonwealth. So really, to all of you, thank you very, very much. It's an honor to serve, and it's incredibly special to know that y'all have my back. It has obviously been a busy few months, both in the months leading up to this election, to make sure that we could, secure the election, and then in the months since, making sure that we secured each and every one of your votes that Donald Trump and his enablers were attempting to disenfranchise. As I've said, at the same time I was running for my own reelection, we were trying to defend our democracy in my role as the sitting Attorney General. The President of the United States and his enablers made attempt after attempt to make it harder for you to vote, and then to make it easier for your votes to be thrown out after they were cast. I'm proud to tell you that overall, we won 19 cases before Election Day and 19 cases after Election Day. Jill, I'm not very good at math, but I think that's about 38 cases, and we haven't lost. It was the work of our office. It was the work of the Department of State. It was the work of outside counsel like Mark and others who did really meaningful work in the courts to defend our democracy and to make sure that every voice was heard in our process. It really began, months before the election with challenges to what's known as Act 77, the law that allows you to vote by mail, which ironically was a Republican bill. It was actually passed with more Republican votes than Democratic votes. And then guidance that came from the governor to perfect that process and make it easier for you to vote in the midst of a pandemic. Donald Trump and his enablers filed many suits. As I said, 38 of them were defeated in this process. They have been baseless. They have been meritless. They have lacked any evidence to back up his claims of widespread fraud. And what we have seen from Donald Trump's enablers, from the legislature here in Pennsylvania, from the Congress of the United States, and from 18 of my fellow attorneys general, I will just tell you personally, has been infuriating, and it's also been saddening. These are individuals who took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and act as though they took an oath to uphold the views of Donald Trump. They seem to be sucking up to one man and acting as his sycophant. And that to me is something that is going to require a lot of work in our democracy to repair as we go forward. They've been willing to lie to Pennsylvanians. They've been willing to lie to Americans. And they have known all along that the nonsense they've been spewing have been lies, and the lawsuits that they've been filing, have been baseless and had no opportunity to prevail. As you know, just about a week and a half ago, we prevailed in the United States Supreme Court. And I used a word in the brief that we filed in response to Texas's lawsuit, that I thought that it was a seditious act. And some people question, why would you use that word? And the truth is, it's exactly what the Texas Attorney General and his enablers were engaged in. They not only lied to the court and lied to the American people, but had they been successful, they would have literally ended our representative democracy as we know it. They would have said, had they had their way, that any state could have objected to the votes of another state if they simply didn't like the political choice that was made. They were literally trying to overturn how we do elections in this country, and they failed. We won, and they lost. And what is going to happen going forward now is that, post November 3rd, the votes were tallied. Joe Biden got 80,000 more votes than Donald Trump did. The Electoral College met last Monday. The House of Representatives will receive those votes and confirm those votes, if you will, on January the 6th. And Joe Biden will be sworn in as president on January the 20th. That is a matter of fact. That is what is going to happen. What I can tell you, though, is that post January 20th, we all have a lot of work to do to repair our democracy, to make sure that our institutions are firmed up again. While the courts held in this instance, a lot of damage has been done over the last 4 years that's going to require all of us to do some tikkun olam, all of us to do our part to make a difference here and repair the damage that was left in Donald Trump's wake. It's going to require us to work in our neighborhoods to repair some of the damage there. And it's going to require us to look at broader questions of reform, like eliminating the Electoral College and moving to a national popular vote, something I support, and a whole lot of work in between. And that work is going to fall to each of us. And I'm certainly proud to be able to be in the room as the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to do that work. And I'm proud to be able to have all of you in that fight with me and to be able to be here tonight with you, Jill. So with that, I'll turn the floor back to you, and I'd love to answer your questions.
We have so many questions, but I was going to start originally with the Texas case, but lo and behold, Trump yesterday filed another case in the Supreme Court, and I saw you tweeted, "I've got this," which made me feel good.
Yeah.
So tell me why you've got it, and can you explain for us how this lawsuit differs from the Texas case?
Well, it's completely different from the Texas case. What they're really doing is regurgitating a bunch of cases that have already been settled and decided against Donald Trump. And they're trying to ask the Supreme Court of the United States to take them up. They're asking for something known as cert, right? They're asking them to hear it. The Supreme Court is under no obligation to take this case. We haven't been asked to brief on this case. We haven't been given any kind of schedule. It's unclear if the Supreme Court will ever even hear it. I've got this because the facts are on our side. There is no new information. There is no new evidence. And all of these issues have already been decided. And it will have absolutely no impact on this election whatsoever.
Before the election, Trump, all of us kept saying there's going to be fraud. You shouldn't mail in your ballots. He spoke about this for months leading up to the election. Were you shocked that the election lawsuits went as far as they did? Because Trump does a lot of things. He doesn't always follow up. In this instance, the magnitude and the number of lawsuits seem relentless. Was that something that surprised you or not?
I fully expected Donald Trump to take this as far as he could. I've been a little bit surprised and frankly pretty disturbed at how far his enablers were willing to go, at how far people who took an oath to the Constitution were willing to go and lie in order to stand with Donald Trump. I think that they've done irreparable harm, to themselves certainly, and question whether they've done irreparable harm to this country. Only time will tell, but certainly to themselves and to their own reputations. So not surprised about Donald Trump. Certainly surprised about how far others have gone. When it comes to election fraud, just real quick, I've prosecuted people for election fraud. I take that very, very seriously. There was no widespread election fraud like Donald Trump's talking about. In fact, I think we had 2 individual cases, and only one resulted in someone actually being able to cast a vote fraudulently. And by the way, was casting the vote for Donald Trump. So there was no fraud. And that's not to say I don't take it seriously, but what I don't take seriously are the lies coming from Donald Trump.
So you talked about in the Texas case, sedition and seditious acts. I even saw you put something up on Instagram. You had sedition as the word of the day. Do you believe that the attorneys who brought these cases should face consequences?
I didn't hear the last part of your
Do you
question.
believe the attorneys who brought these cases should face consequences as attorneys? Should they have some kind of consequence for taking a case that they knowingly know could go nowhere?
Sure. If Rudy Giuliani wants to stand up at a press conference and lie, he can do that. It's a shame, but he can do that. But as Mark well knows and others know, if a lawyer goes into court and lies, there are penalties for that. A lawyer can't go into court and waste the court's time, act in a meritless and frivolous manner. And so all I'll tell you in this forum, Jill, is that we are exploring the possibility of filing for sanctions against some of the lawyers who have been involved in some of these cases. And beyond that, I'm just not going to get into more details right now.
No, that's fine. You were talking about the other attorney generals and 126 congresspeople. I think it's 18 AGs and 126 congresspeople who, joined in or supported the Texas case. This is not 1 or 2 crazy people who have gone off the rails. It's 126 federally elected officials. It's 18 attorney generals.
Yeah.
What was their, and many of these people seem to be just going along even though they know it's not correct. What do you believe their political calculus is?
I know these folks, and I work with a lot of them on various cases. I mean, it's funny. Shortly before they filed that lawsuit, a number of us got together and filed a lawsuit against Facebook, and we were working together on that. And so I always try and work across the aisle and work with my colleagues. There is something wrong with them. I'll just talk about the 18 AGs for a second. And I said this the other day, and a few of them didn't like it. And we had some private conversations where I doubled down, where I said, I don't know if they need a doctor to examine their heads or a doctor to examine their spines. But there is something wrong with them, that they would follow Donald Trump, that these are people who are sworn to uphold the laws of their respective states and are supposed to be the chief legal officers in their states, that they would be willing to go along with this ridiculous charade. And I think there's something really wrong with them. And I think it speaks to the cancer that exists in the Republican Party today that needs to be addressed. As for the members of Congress, I expect less from them generally. The ones that just kind of, blow my mind are these guys from Pennsylvania who actually signed on to a lawsuit that would have invalidated their own elections.
Right, that was my question. Someone like Kelly, who,
oh my
right,
God.
That's what I was going to ask you. In other words, these congresspeople won, so you're saying, please invalidate the case in which I won. I would like to understand the rationale.
There is no rational way of looking at this. What they are doing, I think, is really undemocratic and in some cases really, it's quite seditious.
What decision do you expect in the Supreme Court regarding the soiled PA ballots that arrived 3 days after the November 3rd election? Do you expect this decision to impact voting rights and states' rights to oversee election rules going forward?
I don't know what the Supreme Court will do. The ballots have been segregated. They have been counted. The federal races have not been added to the totals that you see on the the Department of State's website. I think the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was well within its right to set those deadlines. And I think the Supreme Court should actually follow what Alito said the last time they reviewed this. They've actually reviewed it 3 times and refused to step in and invalidate those votes. And that is to follow the guidance of the Secretary of State, which is based on the decision of the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. It's my hope that that will be the end result here. Obviously, it's not going to have any impact on the outcome of the election, but it is important that those votes be counted.
Is there a danger as a result of what Trump did of recurrent post-election litigation, actually by both parties, due to the dysfunction of our political system and the erosion of what we consider to be political norms? In other words, he set us up now for multiple lawsuits. Anytime a loser is unhappy, they could file a lawsuit. Do you think this is something that will become normal and is a further erosion of our democracy?
Certainly, there has been an erosion of our democracy. Certainly, this president has attacked the norms and attacked the institutions. And it will be up to the women and men in office going forward who are going to decide whether that becomes the way of life and the new normal, or whether we go back to respecting institutions, respecting science and facts, and respecting one another. It's my hope that under Joe Biden's leadership, we will revert back to some basic set of norms. Now, I'm not saying that a candidate who believes that there's been fraud, or a candidate that believes that they have been wrong, doesn't have the right to take legal action. They certainly do. But what the president has done here has really been outrageous and has attacked the process in a way that I think is really quite unhelpful.
Do you think increased turnout margins would have impacted Trump's litigation? You know, we won by 88,000, I think, or 80,000 in Pennsylvania. If it was 180,000, would that have made a difference, or you think he just would have continued with this litigation?
No, I mean, he's making up lies in states that he lost by more than here in Pennsylvania. So no, I think he had been setting this up for a year, and he saw it through. And this is the narrative he wants to be able to fuel his enterprises. It's about, I think, making money for him. And it's about being able to completely dominate the Republican Party going forward. And I think he has successfully, certainly in the short term now, set himself up pretty well to do that. Unfortunately, he has managed to attack our democracy and injure our democracy in the process.
There's a Virginia gubernatorial aspirant who's endorsed a tweet by Michael Flynn where he talks about how we should have almost a military coup and have martial law and that sort of thing. You know, as a citizen, you know, on the one hand, it sounds crazy. On the other hand, it's really frightening. Here we are in the United States of America in 2020. You have someone sitting in the Oval Office. No matter what we think of Donald Trump, he is the president of the United States, one of the most powerful men in the world. Was this something of concern to you at all? Is it of concern? You know, it was anxiety producing in me, not just because I'm an erotic Jewish woman and all this makes me anxious, but it is concerning that Michael Flynn was sitting in the White House having a discussion with the president.
It's incredibly concerning, but you know, Manish Tana, right? I see Rabbi Rosenblum. I can say that. This is the way Donald Trump has conducted himself. This is who he's associated himself with. He is corrupt. He has surrounded himself with corrupt people. And, you know, I think it really is on us as we go forward to make sure that we never allow someone, you know, like that near the Oval Office ever again. Even if it's someone that we disagree with on policy or or don't like because of their party or whatever. That's very different than what we've experienced here. And I think it's going to be on all of us to repair our politics and our institutions so that we can no longer have someone like this in a position of power.
That goes to right into my question about the Electoral College. You briefly touched on it. Do you believe that there should be a change in the way we elect presidents to avoid these problems in the future? What is your opinion on the Electoral College? What's the best way, do you believe, to elect a president? I know there's that state compact, which is sort of a variant between the two. What are your thoughts on that since you
Yeah.
on it?
Look, Jill, I've been privileged to serve as an elector 3 times, twice for Obama and just last week for Joe Biden. And I'm here to tell you that we need to end the Electoral College, period. It is a vestige of a past where certain people didn't count when it came time for our elections. Women didn't count, blacks didn't count. It is clinging on to a system that was part of a compromise that we should no longer adhere to, and we need to return the power to the people and make sure that the people are the ones who pick their president. I'd like you to think about this for a minute. Democrats lost a lot of ground across the country in state ledge races and in the US House of Representatives. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think Nancy Pelosi is speaker by a handful or so of votes. Imagine if she lost additional ground and Kevin McCarthy were the Speaker of the House right now. And the will of the people sent forth by the electors in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan were put forth to the House of Representatives under Speaker McCarthy and Leader McConnell. And someone got up and objected to those votes the way Mike Kelly or somebody else is going to do next week or the week after, whenever it happens. You mean to tell me that those guys would actually honor the will of the people and that they would honor tradition and they would honor norms? Hell no. They would honor Donald Trump. And so we have seen that there are no longer guardrails. We have seen that there are no longer safety valves in our system. And as a result of that, you can't have a system in place that denies the will of the people. And therefore, I believe fundamentally that you've got to get rid of the Electoral College and return the power to the people, period.
There were some state elected officials, I think 2 of them actually from Pennsylvania may have gone to DC. Did they engage in anything that you could see that would potentially violate PA law and in a way to disenfranchise voters? Did they actually take the steps, or were they all sort of hot air, essentially?
I think they were full of hot air.
Okay. Okay. And in the chat, a couple people asked questions about gerrymandering, and do you think that is a contributing factor to the dysfunction that we have?
Oh, without a doubt. And look, we're going to get a chance to hopefully repair the system when it comes to the ledge races and the congressional races. We already now have congressional districts. Mark will talk more about this, I'm sure, that are drawn in a way that are, more compact and contiguous and fair. And it resulted in, a fair process and a more balanced, set of representation. That does not exist in the House and the State House and the State Senate. Hopefully through this process that's going to begin in earnest here in a few months, we'll have a fair process with districts that are compact, contiguous, and reasonable again.
70-some million people still voted for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about damage to our democracy and our democratic institutions. If you had to pick 3 things to repair our democracy and maybe bring these people back into a better understanding of the way democracy works, what would those 3 concrete steps be?
I'm not sure I followed that question.
What are 3 concrete steps to improve our democracy?
Everybody should probably take Mrs. Levin's class at Akiba or at Barrack. That would probably help, right? I just saw her pop up on my screen, so I had to say it. But no, look, I think it comes down to agreeing to a basic set of facts again. Agreeing that things like science actually matter, and getting us to a place in this Commonwealth and in this country where we can have a spirited debate about tax policy and healthcare policy and all those other things with a basic set of facts that we agree on and a foundation that we agree on. I mean, hell, we are living through a pandemic and we've got some idiot, elected officials who keep calling it a hoax. And then, by the way, they're the first selfish ones to line up in line to get a shot in their arm. It's outrageous, the hypocrisy that exists. And what I think we need to do to repair our politics is get back to agreeing to a basic set of facts, a basic set of values, a basic set of norms that we are not going to violate, and then have some real spirited debates on how to solve the pressing problems that exist in this Commonwealth and in this country.
And we are a Jewish group, clearly, and I have a question for you regarding anti-Semitism. Since Trump came into office, there's been an incredible rise in anti-Semitism. And among us, we were talking and we were curious whether you, as an attorney general, who's been, the face of protecting the citizens of Pennsylvania in particular, you've gone against Trump, not just here, but for the years that you have served as AG many, many times. Have you ever experienced, anti-Semitic attacks while as an AG?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm not sure there's a day that goes by where I don't. It is the reality of my world. Thank God I've got, wonderful people here in the Attorney General's office that work hard to make sure I'm safe and protected. And I'm grateful to them every day. But to me, Jill, it's not about my safety. It's about the well-being of people in this country who may look different than Donald Trump, or may look different than the people that he encourages, like the Proud Boys. And my view is that we need to get back to a place in this country where we recognize that attacking one person because of their characteristic or their faith or whatever the case may be is an attack against all of us, and that we are weaker as a people when one of us is isolated and attacked. We know, from the ADL reports to the other reports my office puts out and otherwise, that we have seen a rise in hate speech. We've seen a rise in hate crimes. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitic attacks over the 4 years of Donald Trump. In some cases, because he directly fans those flames. In other cases, because he allows his words to be misappropriated by hate groups. He gives a permission slip for people to try to do and certainly say the things that they say to folks like me and others in public positions. And that is the reality that Donald Trump has created. And now we have to move back away from that. Now, we have to be honest with ourselves that certain people feel that they've been disrespected, feel like they've been cast aside, feel like they don't have a place in our economy, feel like they don't have a place in our society. And we need to figure out a way to talk to them. That doesn't justify anti-Semitic behavior or racist behavior or things like that. But we do have to have compassion for others as well. And I think that is an important part as we try and repair our dialogue going forward for all of us to keep in mind.
I'm going to bring Mark into the conversation. Can you stay? I know you have to hop off.
I got 2 minutes, so yep.
Okay. So Mark, could you talk a little bit about the cases that you pursued in state court? How they differed in, say, the Texas case or the case that's currently before the Supreme Court about repealing the decisions made by our PA State Supreme Court?
Hey, Jill, let me just say before Josh leaves, it's really fun to be with Josh. I've known him for so long. That Soviet Jewry reference reminds me of when I used to go to his mother's house and his father's when we were co-chairing the Soviet Jury Council, because their living room was bigger than mine and we could get everybody into it. So, hey, Josh, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mark.
Always. Hey, Jill, every single case that Josh has mentioned, I was involved in. So there are no differences. Every one of the almost 40 cases since the primary, I represented either the Commonwealth when Josh's office wasn't involved, or the big counties when Josh's office was involved. So we worked shoulder to shoulder on every single one of those cases. And I was in many courtrooms and many arguments in many places. So that, it would be easier for me to address the cases generally because they're the same cases. But I want to just give you a few points. First of all, we have a great attorney general and a great office. We should all be proud of that. It was great working with him and his team all the way through. All the last 9 months, really. We've had this going they started bringing cases last April. The challenges were almost always in connection with the mail-in voting statute, but not always. And the results were what Josh said, except for one minor one. I guess he would choose to forget it, and I can't forget it. And that is one little one that we lost. It was inconsequential, but it really makes me mad because otherwise we'd have a perfect record. I will address whatever questions you have. I just want to say that to set some markers on all this vast, almost 40 cases of litigation in virtually every federal courtroom in the Commonwealth and most of the state courtrooms, it seemed like, and including the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, including the US Supreme Court. I'll just set some markers on highlights and then we can go through some questions if you want to. First of all, the Trump fraud case, it was peddled all the way back since the primary. And what's important, and most people don't really focus on, is that we spent the summer knocking out the underpinnings of everything that he wanted to talk about fraud in a federal case in Western Pennsylvania that really took all summer. There was discovery, there were documents, we were in court Zoom hearings, in and out, and in the end got a 120-page opinion from a federal judge that dissected all of his fraud claims and said they were all baseless. So going into the general election, we already had neutralized his fraud claims. The 3-day extension that Josh talked about on receiving votes after Election Day was a brainchild of us and his office in July when the Postal Service announced that you couldn't count on the mail. And we in Pennsylvania set the marker for that first. We were the first anywhere to ask for a Supreme Court, our state Supreme Court, for an extension because of the postal delays. And we received it, we won that case. And that's the case that you referenced that's still in front of the Supreme Court. Another great innovation from this litigation.
Josh needs to leave.
I'm gonna jump.
All right.
Good
Hey,
to see
Josh.
you guys.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so
man.
much for being here. We at DJOP greatly appreciate it. This was interesting and informative, and we're going to continue on with Mark. Thank you again, Josh.
Enjoy, Mark. Happy and a healthy.
Take care, Josh. Say hi
Hey,
to your
Josh.
parents.
See you soon, buddy.
By the way, Mark, after you finish this, I want to at least introduce you. So
Well, let me finish. I'll finish. Jill, throw it in. So one of the things I want people to understand is that we, out of the attention that we all got later, in the dead of the summer, we were spending the summer dissecting and defeating Trump's fraud case. So going into the general election, we'd already basically won that battle. The 3-day extension that we got, we won that battle going into the election. Other states were a little late in the game. We won a major issue in August and September, allowing drop boxes to be used, and then extended that victory for mail-in votes to satellite offices, which blew a gasket in the Trump side. They couldn't believe that we were able to extend that victory. But the fact that we had not only drop boxes, but the use of satellite offices all over the Commonwealth greatly facilitated the mail-in voting that we saw on the general election day. The other things I want to mention is that we should be incredibly proud that we have an independent judiciary, both at the state and the federal level. Virtually every federal case we won it in front of a Republican judge. And some of them we won in front of Trump appointed judges. It's an amazing set of victories, but it didn't matter the orientation of the judge. We had an independent judiciary that followed the rule of law. And the last thing I want to mention is that I had and I mean this, the God-given gift to deal with Rudy Giuliani. I was the guy, right? And as I said, and I'll stop after this, to many people, it reminded me of Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca when he said that of all the crazy gin joints in the world, she walked into mine. Of all the courtrooms in the United States Rudy Giuliani could have gone into, he came to the case I was in federal court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania on November 17, and he never showed up in another courtroom again. And that's because I don't think he liked the treatment that he got, and I don't think he did very well, to make it as an understatement. It was a lot of fun. If anybody has any question about that, I'm happy to talk about that.
So we have some questions about Rudy. So is Rudy as insane as he appears on TV? I mean, he literally looks insane.
Joe, before we get into that, though, let me introduce Mark, okay?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. As Mark mentioned, he was also very much involved in the Soviet Jewry movement. That's why I've known him like 40 years. As a young lawyer, though, he was recognized for his legal skills. He was appointed the youngest city solicitor in Philadelphia's history. And his colleagues later elected him as chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar. He's also recently been named, it was last year, Attorney of the Year by the Legal Intelligencer. But it's not only his legal skills that are so valid, it's his passion for what's right. Mark played a central role in overturning the unbalanced and highly partisan way the Republican legislators had carved up legislative districts in Pennsylvania. He was the lead counsel in a landmark decision regarding the rights of same-sex people to marry. He recently successfully represented the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, excuse me, as he mentioned in several of these cases, and most recently, news it appears that the Republicans aren't giving up. So it'll be interesting to see how long they're going to try and play this game. They kind of remind me, though, of the baseball team that lost by a wide margin and insists that the results of the game is not going to be appealed to the commissioner of baseball because a number of their fans claimed that a ball called for their opponents and the third inning was actually a strike. So while there's no basis, it looks like they're going to continue. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bert.
And I'm going to get back to the Giuliani question.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to hear what Rudy Giuliani's really like?
And what is
All
Rudy
right.
Giuliani really like?
Rudy Giuliani is in love with his own celebrity. And as a result, he only hears himself speak. And I think it works for Rudy when he's on a soapbox at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping parking lot. And it may work when he's being interviewed and he can just get up and walk off the stage, it's the set, if he doesn't like what he's hearing, or if he can yell over the commentator or the person asking questions. But in a courtroom, if he ever was good, he, I think, forgot the basics. When he showed up that day, there was an actual complaint in federal court that we were to argue in front of this judge. A conservative Republican judge, a member of the Federalist Society, a chair of the county Republican Party, appointed to the bench by Senator Toomey, or at least nominated by Senator Toomey. And he walked in, and instead of arguing the case that we had in front of us, he started off in fantasy world, arguing at first that he was here to address a conspiracy of 4 cities, Philly, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Atlanta, and hundreds of election workers who acted as a mafia cabal. That was his beginning presentation. That's a little unhinged, I think. And I sat there and thinking, this is really just deplorable. This is crazy. But I think because the judge let him speak without interrupting, my guess is he thought he was scoring points because by the end of his presentation, that conspiracy involved states and there was allusions to other countries and hundreds of people and all sorts of things moving all over the place. So do I think he is by nature mentally unstable? No, I don't think so at all. I think he's at a place now where he only hears himself talk and believes that if he says it loud enough and long enough, he'll convince enough people. But he forgot that in a federal courtroom, or if he ever knew, in a federal courtroom, it's a controlled environment. When I got up, he couldn't walk out of the room. When I got up, he couldn't start yelling at me. When the judge asked him questions, he couldn't say, that's not a good question. Let me answer a different question. So he was taken apart in a controlled environment at a time when I think the country needed a national cathartic reaction. They were sick of listening to him after the election day, spouting conspiracy. They needed someone to take him on. I happened to be there. I happened to be that vehicle. And it was just an unbelievable outpouring of national and international attention. Unbelievable, because I think somebody needed to puncture the balloon.
The other lawyers that you faced in these multitude of courts, did you know these lawyers prior to going into court who were representing, because there were multiple law firms in multiple counties. Yet, and if you did know them, do you believe that they knew that they were pursuing fraudulent claims? And I'll ask also the same question I asked Josh. Did they face repercussions for pursuing claims that they knew were fraudulent?
The issue of let me get to the end first. The issue of repercussions, as Josh said, is being studied by Josh's office and I think other offices. And we have to leave it there because it is my clients were the government, the counties, or the Commonwealth. There were times when we represented the Commonwealth, not Josh's office. That's a technical thing. But that happened. And so the government attorneys, Josh and the other ones for the counties, are thinking about that issue and addressing that issue. On the more general question, did I know the lawyers? Many of them I did, pre-Rudy Giuliani. As you said, Jill, it was like a rolling thing. There were law firms and then law firms dropped out and other firms got in and then they dropped and other firms got in. And I knew a lot of them and I think they're very well-intentioned. A lot of lawyers I knew, very good lawyers, and they tried their best. I think it got out of hand when Rudy started to steer the ship towards some of these fantastical, nonsensical conspiracy theories. I think it kind of got out of hand. And so, I think the other lawyers were doing the best they could. And when they saw that there was no fraud, they amended the complaints or they took it out of their complaints or they tried to rework their legal arguments away from some of those issues. And to be fair to them, that's what I think about them.
In the 4 years Trump has been in office, he's appointed, I believe, more judges to the federal judiciary than almost in any other president. Do you believe that what I believe to be court packing could be problematic if suits like this come again in the future?
Well, if by court packing you mean that we should do something about the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court, because that's what it usually means.
No, I'm referring to the fact that he's filled up all the courts. He sort of packed all the lower federal bench with Trump judges. Do you think that will impact cases going forward, such as these?
In the margins, that there are judges who, come with predispositions about certain kinds of cases, legal cases. I think we all do, both on both sides of the aisle. But for the main, believe it or not, I really firmly believe that we have an independent judiciary, and I'll give you just two quick examples. In this litigation that we're talking about, there were federal judges in Johnstown, Williamsport, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, who had different litigations brought by Trump or related parties, who were all Republicans, who all ruled against Trump interests or the related party interests in those cases, all right down the line. And in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, the panel that ruled on the Giuliani case was 3 Republican appointed judges, and the one who wrote the opinion was a Trump appointed judge, Stephanos Bibas. And they wrote very strong opinions against Trump's positions, the legal positions. So that's one example where I think we should just calm down a little bit about this and respect that we have a great independent judiciary. Another example would be somebody who I think is an iconic judge, one of the best I've ever been in front of, Judge John Jones in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. He was appointed with great fanfare by Rick Santorum when he was a senator. And if anybody has followed Jones, within 2 years on the bench, 2 or 3 years, he had the case of whether creationism should be taught in the classrooms, public schools. And after a couple-month trial, he ruled no, you cannot teach. It's a form of religion. It doesn't belong in public school classrooms. And then later I had him in the same-sex marriage challenge, and he wrote a bell-ringing opinion striking down the Pennsylvania statute that prevented same-sex marriage. And he said that statute, we as a people are better than that law, and that law belongs on the ash heap of history. Do you think Rick Santorum expected that out of his appointee? I don't think so. But that's what happens when judges get on the bench and they do what they're supposed to do. So please don't. We have the best independent judiciary the world has ever seen, full stop. And it will continue to be that way.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Josh, because again, this is something that was in his brief. He said the court should not abide by the seditious abuse of the judicial process. Do you believe that the actions of the attorney generals and the 126 congressional folks constituted sedition in your view?
Well, the seditious use of process was a well-chosen phrase. We actually, we were part of that appeal. So I'm very proud of that phrase. It's a world of difference than sedition. Sedition is a whole nother subject, and we can talk about that at another time. But to use it in the colorful way it was used, that they were using litigation for the wrong purposes, of course I believe in it. I approved that brief. I supported that position. We were in all these cases. And here's the thing about that particular case. Even the most conservative legal thinkers were appalled that that case was brought, because as Senator Cornyn said, what's the next case? Pennsylvania suing Texas because they don't like our gun laws? I mean, this is not how the United States works. It's not, we have a federal system. Do I think, presently, I also, the case that was just filed yesterday in front of the US Supreme Court is attacking 3 Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions. All 3 of them were our cases. I mean, my case. I mean, cases that we filed, that I signed the briefs on, that I presented. I know those cases inside and out just as well as Josh does. And as he said, it is a ridiculous challenge in front of the US Supreme Court, because for a whole lot of reasons, but fundamentally, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in each case was interpreting Pennsylvania law under our Pennsylvania statute and how mail-in voting works. And the idea that they can bundle them all up, put them together, and claim that, what are they claiming? That the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was part of the conspiracy? That our own Supreme Court factored into this conspiracy, as well as perhaps the Michigan Supreme Court, and I guess now the Wisconsin Supreme Court? I mean, just to say it is to show how ludicrous it is.
In Georgia, there's a very heated Senate election, as you're well aware.
Sure.
Do you think that if Ossoff and Warnock win, the Georgia Republican Party will follow Trump's lead and file lawsuits in the way that was done with the general election? We have many Georgia people on this call, so I'm curious what your thoughts are with respect to that.
You know, I think there is a part of the Georgia Republican Party that will bring those lawsuits. I don't think there's any question. It's the same part of the party that seems to be cheering on some of the wacky lawsuits I've already seen being brought down there. So, but here's the thing. If there's any state for the Georgians on this phone, be proud of your state. I mean, look at the stand-up nature of your, the secretary and even the governor, and the way that Georgians as patriots went through 3 recounts to show not only Georgians, but the whole United States, they ran a good, honest, efficient, fair, and a very close election. So your court system has been knocking down those challenges left and right. I would not be afraid of post-Ossoff, Warnock legal challenges. I would not expect to see any different results because I think you're running a very good system down there.
We have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to ask you the same final question that I asked Josh about anti-Semitism. Did you face any anti-Semitism? Were you attacked in any way by people like the Proud Boys or the far right because of the work you did in protecting the citizens of Pennsylvania?
I've been attacked. Yeah, the answer is yes. And I've been attacked on anti-Semitism for as long as I can remember being in public cases. I don't hide the fact on my bios that I belong to Bethel El Synagogue, that I've been the leader of many, many Jewish organizations. I'm proud of that. And I guess people find that out and they think it's somewhat relevant to yell at me or leave disgusting voicemails or whatever. I mean, that goes with unfortunately goes, as Josh said, with the territory. Not everybody who is disfavored seems to be attacked by the right and sometimes by the left for whatever characteristic they can find to attack them. It's terrible. It's disgusting. I wish it would end. Let me also, but Jill, before I get off this, we had an allusion to gerrymandering before, and Josh is correct. And I want to say to everybody from all the other states you're part of and from Pennsylvania, I was the lead lawyer in throwing out the gerrymandered map in Pennsylvania in 2018. We had 13-5 Republicans locked in, 13-5, 13-5, 13-5. And then we threw the map out. We had it redrawn in a fair way, and suddenly it's 9-9, 9-9. That shows the map was gerrymandered. It shows that democracy is now flourishing at the congressional level in Pennsylvania. We've got to take care of it at the state level, as Josh alluded. But for you all in other states, fight that fight now, because the census is coming out. They're trying to mess around with the census, who's counted, who's not. There are going to be shifts in population. Your fight starts up in the next 6 months. How those congressional maps are going to be drawn, with Pelosi having a 3-4 seat margin right now in the House, is going to be decisive. It's going to be huge. Get involved. I can tell you from Pennsylvania, where they told us, you're never going to win this thing. You're never going to change that map. You're never going to get it thrown out in court. It isn't going to happen. We did. We got it thrown out in court to great success and great democratic outburst in our congressional elections. So word to the wise, don't give up on that.
Thank you, Mark, for all you did to protect the citizens of Pennsylvania. The work that both you and Josh did really was a mitzvah. It protected our votes, it protected our voices. And there, as you said, were a multitude of lawsuits thrown around in the state of Pennsylvania. So we all owe you, all parties, thank you for protecting us and protecting our rights. I want to thank everyone on this call for being here. You could be a lot of places tonight, and we are very grateful that you chose to be with us. I would ask that you check out our website, DJOP.org. This was a free event, but it costs money to run our organization. And I would hope you would consider making a donation. You can do that by going to DJOP.org. And before all of you leave, I see you're all leaving, please think about making a donation. And there's another event tomorrow night in conjunction with Jewish Democratic Council of America that you will not want to miss. It's a conversation with Rabbi Saperstein and Black leaders about Black-Jewish relations in Georgia and generally. It's at 3 o'clock tomorrow. The sign-up link is on our webpage under events. It will be excellent. So please sign up for that and sign up for our newsletter. And thank you. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe.
You're very welcome. Thank you all. Bye-bye.